now for MediaWatch, and Emma James has been looking at the latest twists and turns on UK's Brexit roller coaster. This time it's Michael Gove who's officially thrown his hat into the ring to be the next UK Prime Minister.
Yes, and it's not necessarily the most popular thing that he's ever done. He's not known necessarily for making everyone unite behind him. He's been quite a divisive figure in UK politics for quite some time, particularly when he was in charge of education. You either loved him or loathed him, I think is probably the best way to explain it. But he has said he wants to lead the UK out of the EU into this new post-EU era. Having campaigned alongside Boris Johnson, he is now seen by many, perhaps most people, as having pushed his former ally under the political bus. Now, the Washington Post have dubbed that Brexecution. They say that despite staging this political ambush, Michael Gove says he acted out of conviction, not ambition. But this is a man who has said repeatedly that he doesn't want to be Prime Minister. So it is all a little bit baffling. And add that to his unpopularity, and a lot of people are poking fun at Michael Gove today. In particular, his apparent inability to clap, as normal people might do. Have you ever seen a man who finds it this hard to clap like a normal person, asks Jolyon Rubinstein. And it is very mean, it has to be said. Lots of tweets like this one. Gove's new campaign slogan, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. My God, no, not like that. What are you doing? There's even an article in Shortlist entitled How to Clap Like Michael Gove Claps. And they are exceptionally mean and inappropriate, it has to be said. They talk about Michael Gove being a man unburdened with the knowledge of how a human body works. Just look at how he drinks, and they have lots of images like that, and admittedly it does look a little strange. Now, you may wonder why I'm focusing on something that is very childish and very unfair, some people might say. But I'm doing it because it really highlights a fundamental hypocrisy in terms of how the British media treat their politicians. If we look at this tweet, The Sun refused to back Ed Miliband for Prime Minister due to how he ate a sandwich. Ed Miliband was the leader of the Labour Party back in May 2015 last year, when we last had a general election. But The Sun may now back Michael Gove despite his inability to clap. Now, The Sun's front page just before that election was this: Ed Miliband looking very unfortunate indeed. It was deemed to be a sign that he was not a man of the people because he couldn't eat what is an ordinary working man's breakfast. That was the view of The Sun, at any rate. And the words there, save our bacon, i.e. don't vote for Ed Miliband. And it is all very inappropriate and excessively personal, but it is something that the British media does a great deal of. Now, what this Twitter user points out is, in hindsight, I think Ed Miliband ate that bacon sandwich with a serene dignity we have now lost forever, using the hashtag, of course, Brexit. If we take a look in The Guardian, Marina Hind has absolutely no sympathy whatsoever for Michael Gove. What she says is that no one bidding for the leadership of the Tories is unsoiled, but Gove's weapons-grade treachery makes rivals such as Theresa May look squeaky clean. So we'll have to wait and see whether it's his treachery or his rather unfortunate images on the internet that have the lasting effect.
Well, fortunately, if you are Prime Minister, people clap for you. You don't have to do a lot of clapping yourself. Well, Britain and France are standing together today, of course, with events taking place, marking 100 years since the Battle of the Somme began. But there's one unusual memorial, and that's really capturing people's imaginations in the UK. What is it?
It is a very unusual memorial. What we've seen, of course, today is all the usual ceremonies at Teep Val, where, of course, there is that stunning archway, the memorial to the 70,000 plus soldiers whose bodies have never been found. And that is what we are used to seeing on these kind of anniversaries. But there has been a living memorial taking place in the UK today. Lots of images flooding out online, including this one from the comedian Dawn French. Has anyone seen World War I soldiers on their commute this morning? And there's a group of men dressed as World War I soldiers outside a cafe, and this was commonplace across the country today. The hashtag We Are Here was being used. You can see a young man there, and he's holding a card which bears the name of one of the 19,240 British and Commonwealth servicemen who were killed just on the first day, the 1st of July, 100 years ago today. And it is kind of putting a face, I suppose, to the numbers that we know, the stories that we know, and it's bringing it to life for people in a very real way. And they were all carrying these cards. Now, they didn't speak, so they became known as really ghost soldiers because they were wandering around in places like train stations, town centres, village halls. They were turning up everywhere in groups, not speaking to anyone, but anyone who approached them was handed a card, and that bore the name, the rank, and the date of death and birth of those people who had died. And each man was representing one soldier in particular. And it really does seem to have touched people, as you can see, at Brixton Station in London this morning, silent as ghosts. Now, there is a website which has compiled all of these images because it was a work of art. Artist Jeremy Deller, one of those involved in creating this. 1,400 volunteers took part. And the reason why the website is called becausewearehere.co.uk is because of a song that the soldiers sang in the trenches. And these ghost soldiers today reenacted that across the country. Let's take a listen. So as you see there, the war cemeteries might give us an idea of the scale of the sacrifice that was made, but this really turning it into a human reality. And I think the echoey sounds of that song in the train station really seemed to hit a nerve with people. This Twitter user saying, after a thoroughly miserable week, the effect of #WeAreHere has just floored me and everyone else, it seems. If we look at this image from Waterloo Station again in London, a woman embracing one of these soldiers. And this image, really very touching. The pictures of soldiers in random places are really thought-provoking, but this one I find heartbreaking. And if we take a look at that image, I'll just try and zoom in a little bit more. You've got a mock soldier there on a train, and behind him you can see an elderly lady wiping the tears from her eyes. It really is something that seems to have hit home so much at a time when there's so much bad feeling in the United Kingdom. This really does seem to have brought maybe a bit of perspective to it.
Wow, what a great idea. And very touching. I think I got chills and choked up at the same time. Well, thank you, Emma.